probably not gonna do exactly what Luis intended me to do, because I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent. But I want to be useful, and I think this is something that, again, a lot of you who are here already are already going, you've already survived the startup, and so there's a lot of talk of accreditation, but I think a lot of you also in rural areas are going to be friends and family with, people who come behind you from training or people who go into another rural area in your state. And so I think this is good advice in general, sort of from having seen people get burned and been burned a little bit myself. And we talk a lot about the ideal world or the targets and the way we study what works, but we don't look at the failures that much. And so I like to start with a bang so that if I do trail off, I'll introduce myself a little bit as we go along more. But honestly, my best advice is to not do gastric bypass for starting programs. And that is controversial, but that's sort of why you hire somebody to come up and be the bad guy a little bit. I mean to be provocative of discussion, but not to be abrasive or, adversarial on this. But honestly, your goal in an early program is just to survive that first 2 years. And a lot of people, I think, most people in a rural practice are also general surgeons as well, right? And I always skip ahead on my points, so I'll save that a little bit later. This is my opinion. I don't expect it to be universal, and I know it's not universally done. But I like to think about how you folks will talk to somebody 5 years behind you in 5 years about how to survive. So I'm in Salt Lake. Well, I'll get to that. So conflict disclosure, I don't have any personal disclosure. I am not, we're all very brave people as surgeons, and we all take risks, but it does not mean we like to have problems. And I had a sleeve in 2008, so I'm a sleeve gastrectomy patient. And I took it very, very freaking seriously being a patient as well in terms of choosing my surgeon, choosing where I had surgery. Some of my talk is going to be, and it wasn't about data, right? We track data. I believe in data. I believe in quality improvement programs. But honestly, when you're in a small town, the data is not the end or the beginning of your program. It's a part of your program. So I really do think, to what Luis really brought me in to talk about in terms of case selection, that overall, if I can give one word of advice, just do your general surgery criteria. Don't take care of any patient in your hospital for bariatric surgery that you wouldn't take care of for general surgery. Don't be afraid to refer. So this is why I think sleeve is perfect for rural practice. It's not more risky than taking out gallbladders or fixing hernias. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings depending on which environment you go into. And if you have an ideal CEO, that's one thing. If you have an ideal senior partner, that's another thing. But you're going to have to do a lot of educating, and it's going to take a lot of time. And I think that's the one thing too. You can go into meetings and everybody will nod and leave, and they'll revert to their previous level of understanding. So you really got to spend time educating the community, not just persuading with data, not just persuading with research, but actually showing people that you're going to do a lot of hiatal hernias, that there's going to be people who have reflux problems, that there's going to be a long recovery for these operations, and that surgeons like to fix things, and we as bariatric surgeons still have this attitude of we need to fix things. We're getting more and more understanding that this is lifelong care, not just aftercare, but care of the disease of obesity. We're going to upstage people. We're gonna have people come back with weight regain or I hate the word failure, but inadequate weight loss with any operation. The medication support is going to be part of your program. So there's a lot of education. And gastric bypass, and I've done a lot of them. It's a trap you may survive, but I've also seen people. We were talking before about a junior associate. It wasn't in my practice. It wasn't even. But I wasn't doing general surgery, but who took on Whipples in her first 2 years because the hospital wanted to get her busy, and she was well trained and she could do them. Guess who her worst enemy was? It was the other general surgeon who brought her in and recruited her, and then turned right around and got fussy when there were patients to take care of. I don't care how much they love you, the other general surgeons in your community, if you're the solo bariatric surgeon, when they have to take care of an internal hernia that they're not comfortable with, we've all heard that, right? On a Sunday night, they're perfectly comfortable with the trauma, with everything else. They're macho as hell until, so you got to be careful what you're leaving behind. So I really might, again, this is total opinion here. Spend the 2 years, oh, that's my first apology slide too. You spend all this time in fellowship learning how to suture, and I'm telling you to just sleeve for 2 years, no. Do you want to suture? Get a Sage's box, okay? Keep your suturing skills up that way. Sew a lot of hiatal hernias. Sew a lot about, you're going to do a lot of general surgery in a rural practice. Go do all your suturing on colons, okay? And it's not wrong, I'm skipping ahead again, to do complications that present to you. It's not wrong to take care of complex patients. I'm not saying be a chicken, okay? Run off that hill with your helmet on, but make sure the wind is right and the hill is right and you've got your instructor there. There's so many stories, and we could all tell the older surgeons in the room, people who've been burned, and we've seen people be burned. One of the biggest mistakes I think that people have going into a rural community is not getting to know everybody else in the state. And I was in Minnesota in Duluth with my first bariatric practice, and I think one of the most important things that we had that was good in Minnesota, but it was a statewide resource at the U that the Crosby program participated in, and Mayo came up, and we had annual meetings. But if you are not known by face, by handshake, by name, by speed dial from your university, you're just that a-hole up the road. They need to know you like their cousin, okay? Because they will be seeing your complications one way or another. And if they talk about you bad, it is bad news in the state. And that goes for all the other programs in the state too, being collegial with them, because we all, people move around and patients don't always have chemistry. And so you really need to learn to integrate it in your state. And I'm going to confess that I'm not doing that right now with Dr. Faust, because I go up to, so I'm in, so here's my history. So I was in general surgery for 5 years, 1999 to 2004 in Yakima, when you really had to come to Washington State as an associate professor with 100 or 200 staple cases to even start a program. You couldn't get insured. So I'm up the road from Dr. Faust in a side practice now, or down the road, and we haven't gotten to know each other that well because I'm kind of a carpetbagger in Idaho a little bit. But I can bet you Dr. Faust knows almost all the surgeons in Idaho, and so anyhow, we don't always do what we say to do, but in Yakima, we sent patients, sometimes general surgery patients, over to the U. That relationship saved my bacon a few times, that they knew me and I knew them. So I couldn't get a bariatric surgery program going there, and I ended up doing fellowship, mini fellowship training with Dr. Schauer, 6 weeks and then 4 weeks, and settled finally in Duluth, Minnesota after trying very briefly in Maine, in a very small town. And Duluth is not a rural market, but it's seen that way in Minnesota because nobody likes to go up there. But anyhow, so I've done general surgery, and that was bariatric surgery there, and then tried to start a program in Bellingham, Washington. Did a couple dozen cases over a year and a half, but did not have hospital buy-in, even though it was a perfect market. In Billings, Montana, perfect market, but again, hospital relationships are not always perfect, and one of the things that really burned me in Billings was endoscopy and the GI docs and turf wars. So I'm going to talk about that for a minute too. So to me, that survival, there's a lot of ways to not survive. So, and now going up to Pocatello, it's partly from a program that had us, I wouldn't say a false start, but a 2 or 3 year struggle, and lost their surgeon. And there was a lot of, I also should retitle this to doubt, benefit of the doubt. And I think that's the problem, is people will express doubts behind a program's back. And that's your biggest enemy, not bad data, but a community with doubt. And so these are the traps. And administration, I don't think even the best CEO doesn't completely get it, what we do, so be cautious about that. Getting a program started is one thing, keeping it going is another. CEOs do change, and I've seen programs where they get a new CEO who just got shut down. A program that was well established for almost 10 years in Maine, new CEO, didn't quite get the numbers, didn't like heavy people, and the program was gone in about a year and a half. So, and I'm not up here to scare, but I'm here to say, be very careful. Your friends are only your friends for, partially. They're not out to get you, but they're not out to get you, but they worry, and they worry a lot. And we still can't kid ourselves in 2019 that bariatric surgery does not get the benefit of the doubt in a community. We are the first out the door in terms of what are they doing to those people. That lady had a problem. So I want to skip ahead on slides. So one of the other things, though, I think that is most important, again, this sort of advice to a young surgeon from a young old surgeon. I'm not that old, but I've been around for a while. But your own expectations and impatience, and we want you to be impatient in a community. We want you to drive a program. But man, if you're working with a lot of hospitals, and especially privately owned hospitals, they move at a glacial pace, and you can burn yourself out in terms of trying to drive things forward. One of the ways I went in was in private practice. At first, we decided to do colonoscopies to help out the GI docs. They went from 5 to 2 in our community. They were begging us to help. So we decided, we got together, and on Friday, we told our manager to run an ad, and it was in the paper on Monday that we ran colonoscopy. How long do you think that would take with 3 or 4 VPs and 2 lawyers reviewing that if you were an employed physician? You might be unlucky enough to have 2 years, right? 6 months would be blazingly fast. So it's okay to be impatient, but then try to hold and wait and not have your own expectations of who you're working with. But the other problem is you're well trained. You came out of mostly totally kick-ass programs for residency and for fellowship, and you want to take on these hard cases, and you don't want to leave patients in the lurch. And that, your own expectations of yourself, can be really hard when you have those complications. And we're in this age of starting to understand burnout, but I think this is a key to where we want to be God. Okay, I'm getting time, sorry. So, and the other thing is team is critical, but it takes years to build in most cases. Some of us have a dream team right away, but I'll tell you, inside your own team, you can be seen as too aggressive or too cautious. And I saw this, I don't want to get too specific, but where a surgeon refused too many patients and got burned out that way, and then where the surgeon said, no, I can handle that patient, and their program coordinator said that patient wasn't ready. So those conflicts can brew. So be aware of these caveats. So we've already talked about some of these. So administration is going to be watching your metrics, and this is the number one reason why I say sleeves. You're not going to have that many takebacks on sleeves, or it's going to be oversewing a bleeder. You're not going to have that internal hernia that the best of surgeons do. So there's other pressure growing a small program to be self-pay. One of my other conflicts in billings was they charged $27,000 for a self-pay sleeve. We didn't do any, and I tried to get them to $17K. It took a year and a half, and they hated me for it. Right? Oh, we value your challenging us, but so you're damned if you do and damned if you don't a little bit. But it can be done. It just don't expect it's automatically going to happen. I think we hear the success stories. So Dr. Porges told me in 1998 when I finished general surgery residency in '99, and was really wanting to go into this. And I was 300 pounds at the end of residency. So he knew we were talking about a bunch of different things. He said, go out. This is open going to LAP in '99 and 2000, and things were very chaotic then. He said, go be a good general surgeon first, because if you're a bariatric surgeon in a community long enough, you're going to have some 37-year-old mother of 3 die in your little community, right? It may take years, but or somebody like that, somebody who shouldn't have died. Well, if she came in for a lap chole and died of a PE, people say, oh, the gallbladder had to come out. Nobody, you know what I mean? You got the benefit of the doubt. If you take care of 5 people's grandmas with dead gut in the ICU and you were their last general surgery salvation, okay, we know this new surgeon, she handles death okay, she can deal, we can count on her. So go build your reputation as a general surgeon and then add bariatric. But serve the whole community. But it also allows you as a new surgeon to build your confidence. I think in 2019, you can do sleeves. You don't have to wait. I think it was good advice for '99. But I'm saying today, I think it's just as good advice to say, don't go doing a lot of bypasses. But don't say no much. Dr. Higa, I love this. We never tell a patient no, we say not yet, is the full quote. right? You have somebody in who's a full-blown alcoholic or smoking and you don't do smokers, say, I'm going to take care of you, but we're going to get there together, or not. We don't have to get there. I also think for new surgeons in a new community, record every case, and in 2019, your best defense is have an outside review already on your own. I think the death knell, I've never had it, but I've heard people say, they're going to have somebody come in to review my cases. Man, you've already lost the benefit of the doubt. So do that ahead of time. Get on CSATs, get on case review. Do your personal quality improvement, not just your obligatory quality improvement. So in a small community, when one or two people turn against you, it's your reputation with everybody else that's going to save you, not your data, right? If one GI doc decides he or she wants you out of town, if everybody else loves you and you've taken good care of them as general surgery, you're just a solid part of the community. That's the reality. So 2 or 3 just hot tips from me. My cell phone is on my business card. Every one of your patients in a small town should be able to reach out and touch you, okay? If they call the general surgeon on call, that's fine. But never let anybody say you're not accessible. We all come out of big programs usually for training, and we're all in a money-saving era. It's not your job to save money. Study, and restudy. Doesn't mean you have to get a CAT scan every 5 days, but be careful how efficient you are. I haven't done this. This is another thing. Become board certified in obesity medicine. Why on earth should a bariatric surgeon in a small community not be obesity medicine boarded as well? Because that is part of what we do. And then the final thing from every old or young old surgeon, man, in doubt, go to the OR. You will always be faulted for not going to the OR, and you will fault yourself. This is the biggest, every surgeon you talk to who's over 50 or 60, their worst cases are the ones where they didn't go to the OR when they should have. Everything else we can forgive ourselves for. We very rarely forgive ourselves for not getting in that OR when there was a bleeder or a leak or an abscess that nobody thought was an abscess, or the CAT scan didn't show it. Okay, so the public effort, again, be a community surgeon more to me is the patient selection. Treat everybody like your grandma. So that also means, though, having readable notes, so people who come behind you to case review, not necessarily 5-page notes, right? I think that the bugaboo with the EMR, time-wise, the bugaboo with the EMR is notes that are not readable. So make all caps and underline and bold in that EMR of what you really think. Somebody should know what you really think quickly. Get on social media, join the Obesity Action Coalition. These 2 links, these are the 2 best things for every patient to have resources. The World According to Eggfish. Shelley Vicari used to share recipes, or the skillet and 2 eggs. She is the queen of blogs. And then the Weight Loss Surgery podcast is awesome. You're going to come back. This is total opinion. This is what you're going to want to do on your sleeve failures. This is what you're going to want to do eventually instead of gastric bypass. And I apologize a little for putting this in, but this is mostly going to kill bypass because of the pylorus more than anything, because of dumping and because of internal hernia. So, all right. So wear a helmet. Anything worth doing that's fun actually requires a helmet. Go out there and kick butt, but don't look for trouble. Trouble will find you enough. Get your goodwill capital going, and then endoluminal is really cool, and I've done them, but I've had complications after a very careful study with almost every endoluminal. I don't think you want to do that the first couple of years. You want to be careful on that too. Thank you. I'm sorry to take so long.
I just want to ask a provocative question since he chose to be provocative on this initial stage. Who agrees with him that a new program only should do sleeves?
Well, my very first case, I'm the next speaker, and I'm talking about complications, and my very first case was a bypass. And all the complications I'm going to present to you are bypasses.
And I talk.
I don't mean to say this, but it doesn't look like your initial statement is that popular in this world.
Well, that's okay. I'm not here to be popular, but I do want to be friends.